Is Canada's dirty underbelly being exposed by these gang wars and killings? Joining me for more on this big story, Terry Milewski is a senior Canadian journalist and author. Blood for Blood, 50 years of Global Khalistan Project. Ambassador Vivek Kaju is former secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, and he's dealt with Canada and its inaction on Khalistan terror closely. Also with me is India Today's Shiv Arur, who's been tracking developments on the story very, very closely. Shiv, I want to begin by asking you, the Canadian police rightly described the latest killings, especially that 11-year-old child, as sick and twisted. But what more do we know about these gang wars and these gangland-style killings in Canada?
Well, this was a terrifying gangland hit, of a senior functionary, a senior gangster of a gang called the Brothers Keepers Gang. This is one of the most prominent Khalistani Indo-Canadian organized crime groups operating in Canada that spread their tentacles to other places. Harpreet Uppal is this 41-year-old gangster who was shot dead in his car in Edmonton, along with his 11-year-old son. The most horrifying part of this case, Gaurav, is that the 11-year-old son was known to be in the vehicle, and the attackers apparently decided to eliminate him as well. So the child was shot at point-blank range, completely in violation of any sort of sacred code that gangsters operate under to spare children. So that shows you the kind of brutality, cruelty, ruthlessness with which these Khalistani gangs are operating under. And the killing of Harpreet Uppal, he himself, a murderous gangster who's had a hit ordered on him in the past as well, is part of the Brothers Keepers Gang, which is infamous for all variety of organized crime, from extortion, to contract killing, to many other things, beyond just British Columbia, which has been the preserve and the bastion of some of these gangs, but being killed far away in Alberta. Another infamous gangster called Paramveer Chahil was killed in Toronto. Before that, there were two more. So in a span of a couple of weeks, 4 senior level gangsters of some of these groups have been killed. So this is gangland violence going completely out of control in Canada. Handgun related crimes seeing a big spike in Canada as well. And it's the talk of the town in the Canadian press, or at least, should I say, a section of the Canadian press.
Okay. But let's try and understand this more. Terry Milewski, police suspect Uppal was a Don, as Shiv was describing, with the Brothers Keepers Gang. There had been an attempt on his life earlier. There were reports of multiple gangs operating in the British Columbia, United Nations Gang, Red Scorpion Gang, Brothers Keepers. Sir, how serious is this threat of gang war and their alleged link to Khalistan in Canada?
Well, it's extremely serious, Gaurav, for obvious reasons, but it's not new. These ties between Khalistani elements and gangland elements are of long standing and they're deep. We know that they seem to be two sides of the same coin. The affiliation with Khalistani separatism among a small minority of the Indian diaspora in Canada, and the depth of those links includes, for example, the late Rapudaman Singh Malik, a prominent suspect in the Air India case. He was the financier of the Baba Khalsa, the terrorist group which blew up the Kanishka in 1985, as you well know. He was murdered in a similar gangland hit. He's at the wheel of his car, masked men burst out of the bushes, shoot him dead, run off, then you find the getaway car in flames after that. Same thing a year later with Hardeep Nijjar in Surrey, British Columbia, another locus of these gangland wars, where there's been a shooting almost every other weekend, it seems, in the last couple of years. And in that case, the Malik camp was suspected of exacting revenge upon the Nijjar camp because the Nijjar camp was suspected of getting rid of, eliminating its rival in Mr. Malik, who had achieved a rapprochement with the Indian government, apparently. He had written a gushing letter. This is a former financier of the Baba Khalsa, a terrorist organization, a Khalistani terrorist organization, who apparently flipped at the age of 75 and wrote a gushing letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, thanking him for the wonderful things he had done for the Sikhs. The Indian government was now a great friend of the Sikhs, which was regarded as a betrayal by Malik's former Khalistani allies. Now, sorry for the complicated story, but it is a complicated story. But here's what comes out of it, is that we are now in the midst of a diplomatic row
Yes.
of unprecedented severity between Canada and India, are we not? And guess what? The theory of the Canadian government that the Indian government was somehow involved in the murder of Mr. Nijjar has been poo-pooed by the Indian government. They call it motivated, they call it absurd. Well, it suddenly doesn't seem quite so absurd if you blend the two competing theories on the murder of Nijjar. The one theory that it was a government hit by the Indian government, and the second theory that it was a gangland hit by the Malik camp to get revenge.
Where is the evidence in public domain? Where is the evidence is the question.